Hello and welcome to Connecting the Dots podcast, connecting people and systems. We talk to brilliant minds from education, manufacturing, public service, and beyond, exploring the dynamic interplay between people and the systems that drive their success, and hopefully to help you discover how you can connect more dots in your own life and work. Now, look, we usually do a quick introduction. What excited you this week? Was there anything that excited you this week that you can talk about?
I don't know if it excited me, but the fact that we've almost got 1 million young people in England out of education, employment, and training is something that really caught my attention. It's been something I've been watching for a while, but to hear that the stat is almost that big now, it really does feel like there is a system and a systems change that needs to happen urgently, Sam.
Excellent. As always, Link has an Luke has an intellectual answer. Mine is I was excited that I saw the sun today and felt a little bit mild and that warmer weather was on the way. So no surprises to the differences there. So Luke, you have brought our fabulous guest today. Introduce Lindsay and take it away.
Okay, well, I think is more than capable of speaking for herself, but it's a delight to have Lindsay on the show. I've worked with Lindsay for over 3 years, and we did an amazing piece of work called Building Bridges, looking at a transatlantic sharing of restorative practice between schools in New York and Manchester. And she was just really charismatic and engaged and tried to understand the Mancunian accent as well, which was which was really impressive to do. And she was kind enough to read my book and then really challenged me on some system stuff to say this is what you may not have thought about from a perspective of the States as well. So really delighted to have her on board on the show and just the insight she'll bring and the kind of grounded practice that is very always child centric is one of the things I enjoy talking to Lindsay about.
Welcome, Lindsay. Tell us, what do you do? Tell us what you do. We know how Luke met you, but tell us what you do.
So what do? I do a little bit of everything in regards to life, if you will, but when it comes to my career, I travel around. I love systems work. My background is special education and autism, emotional behavior disorders, crisis intervention. And so what I love doing is working with adults that work in systems, and really trying to coach them up on we can answer questions when we are out of the pocket of actually having to live through the experience at times. And so how do we make that how do we make those skills transfer into when we actually need them the most? And so really, I love working with adults because I feel like if we can empower the adults and give them the motivation and also an additional tool or two in their toolbox, it's only going to make their system better, and hopefully the application will then impact a child. So like Luke said, I'm very child first, extremely child centric. So my love of education and especially working with kids that have significant needs is really what gets me going. I love it.
So, what changes have you seen, Lindsay, in the last 12, 13 months or so, alluding to the change in presidency that you've had? I know that there was, Luke and I have often talked about the scrap of the EDI. How has
Mhm.
that affected sort of the education system over there?
It definitely is impactful because as you guys know, like when we're working with pockets of money, that's basically what drives our systems. And so when the feds have control over where the pockets go, and then sometimes they are delayed or unsure of exactly what bucket the finances need to go to, then that trickles down to the state level, which then goes local. And so as that progresses from the top down, it causes a lot of unrest, if you will, in regards to the educator's view on am I going to be able to provide services for these kids if there's not accessible resources out there. Really, just it's nerve-wracking, to be completely honest. I do a lot of consulting with a group called GLRS, which is the Georgia Learning Resource Services. And what we do is we go out into smaller districts that are local. And a lot of our funding comes from the federal government for us to be able to go in to provide trainings professional developments, workshops, hand over hand modeling, and things like that. And so when everything shifted, the money part is a lot of the issues in regards to like what's next, if you will. Because we're already short staffed here. Like teachers are underpaid. There's not a lot of substitute teachers that are willing to come in when teachers are out. It's heavy right now. It's very heavy here in the US. And I can speak, from the special education side, but I'm also in buildings and I feel the burn for the gen ed teachers too. So it's really like, how do we, come together in a time of crisis and uncertainty to really make sure that our path and our focus is still on kids and to not involve kids in adult problems.
Amen to that. Unfortunately, kids are the number one, very much a political pawn, I feel. And in the UK, we've kind of seen a big increase in demand for special educational needs, a lot of frustration from parents that the system isn't supporting their child. Debate, and I'm sure there's a lot of common elements, that there's increased awareness, more rigid education systems are meaning that more kids aren't fitting in to the idea of what is normal in the system. Are you experiencing the same thing in the States, like the increase in awareness of SEN and diagnosis?
Yeah, I definitely think that there's an awareness. I think awareness is awareness. It doesn't fix anything, right? And so it's like there's an awareness, but then what does the responsive piece look like? And so I think when you're really looking at that responsive component, it gets uncomfortable, like to be completely honest, because going back into the resources, and the things of that nature. So like right now, one of the biggest pushes that I've seen as I'm going in and supporting, so we have an adaptive curriculum. So you have adaptive standards, and then you have the curriculum standards. And there's it's not necessarily a new law, if you will, but what's happening is they only want, and when I say they, I mean the federal government and state only want our most at-risk population, if you will, so our extremely cognitive delayed, they're only wanting to identify 1% of that. And so what's happening is if students have intellectual disabilities that don't have a certain IQ level, they are highly encouraging the students of that level to be pushed in more of an inclusion. Not to say that I don't feel like inclusion is appropriate, but I think that we also have to meet kids where they are. And so now what's happening is we're now having classrooms that are filling up with adapted standards and general education standards, and we're blending students together and requiring teachers to teach 40 different subjects with, cognitive ranges from, 65 to possibly a 90 in your classroom, and just really trying to bring that together. So I think rather than meeting kids where they are, I'm so sick of people putting percentages on numbers on people's most prized possessions. And if a child needs a level of service, they require a level of service. Who's to say what level of service that is, because you want us to fit in a bubble of 1%? It drives me absolutely crazy, and it makes absolutely no sense.
So Lindsay, with that then, what happens to those students that don't fit the tick box? Where do they go in an American system?
Typically they I would refer them to as like a bubble kid, if you will. So there's the way that our systems are created is like you have the intellectually disabled that we would call based on IQ. And then we have the kids that are considered two standard deviations below what would be typical, right? And so what happens is the cognitive disabilities are now being pushed up the level rather than modifying. We don't modify for them anymore. We now have moved into accommodation. And so what's happening is those children that are functioning under that adaptive need are no longer getting that life skill that they should be receiving in their alternate assessment class, and now they're being asked to read Shakespeare.
Right.
Yeah. So my struggle is how are we helping the teachers in regards to giving them an opportunity to meet all needs with limited resources, And then, like there's just so many things that are going on in regards to some of those classrooms and pushing that 1% out. And then I look at it like as a certified educator, like in regards to like the ethical standpoints and things like that, are we putting teacher certification at risk by putting children in a standards-based
Mm.
classroom, knowing that they're not going to be able to meet that expectation that has now been placed on us by the state? And so it's really trying to get in, and I've been a part of some of these classrooms, and it's really getting in and being a part of the creative process. Anytime I go into a setting or a system, I feed off the adult. And so if I'm looking at an adult and they're in crisis, the first thing that I say is, let's work smarter, not harder. What's working well, right? And so we really want to make sure that we're working on strength-based approaches. And so then after we do talk through that strength-based approach, then we talk through dynamic, because what we want to look at is the end product. If we're all working on main topic, whether it's standards-based or adaptive, what are the avenues in which we're able to assess whether a child is proficient, right? And so is that writing a 5-sentence paragraph? Is that verbally speaking the answers? Is that matching? Is that sentence strips? Is that sentence frames? And then how can we help the teachers who have such a vast array of students in their classrooms be able to scaffold while making sure that they're still assessing when we have such a wide range of cognitive ability? So
Mm.
really it's talking people off the ledge and saying, you've got this, and like being a cheerleader and a coach when I go in.
And I do like the universal design for learning framework that I've seen
Yes.
coming from the States. And
Yes.
I know a lot of international schools are taking that on board. So when
Mm-hmm.
you talk adapted teaching, because like adapted teaching is a new word in the UK for differentiation because that became a bad word. We weren't allowed to talk about differentiation. Now we just talk about
Mm-hmm.
adaptive teaching, but it's the same thing. Is UDL kind of a big thing in the way that you're working with the accommodations?
Yeah, I would say yes. I think again, Luke and I've had conversations when you're looking at systems, and it's like the word time, right? Like you feel time, because you're with your kids for a short amount of time, and then it's measuring the progress, right? So you have all these, how do you put that UDL in place so we can make sure that we're being able to assess, while then we have kids that process at different speeds, that we need the accommodation. There's lots of different pieces that go into play. And I think a lot of times too, a lot of educators that I've, worked with in the past, a lot of people struggle with defining and coming up with the differences between an accommodation and a modification.
Mm.
Because here in the US, like those are pretty significant things which would determine what you're doing specifically to that standard, and if it's impacting the fidelity or the credibility of the standard, if
Mm.
you will.
So talking of systems then, because obviously Luke is super excited by systems,
Yes.
you have got a lot of influential factors in your educational system. I'm not au fait with it 100%, but you've already talked about the state, you've already talked about the federal.
Yep.
So how many sort of stakeholders from the higher level have you got coming into your education system?
It depends on if you are, because we get report cards here, right? And so what happens is if you aren't proficient in certain areas, the state will then come over. They'll give you like 2 or 3 years where you put in action plans, and then if you don't meet the state standard of whatever that criteria from the report card comes, then the state will come in and take over.
So that's like our sort of education healthcare plans where we give extra if somebody's not meeting the or progressing, and they're not at the standard and they've got a special educational need, they get an educational healthcare plan and they get funding and a list of objectives and support and interventions
Mm.
that's got to be put in place, and
Yep.
that's reviewed. So that's what the sort of state does.
Yeah, absolutely. So what they'll do is they'll come in and they'll do a walkthrough, based on standardized scores, attendance. There's lots of pockets, if you will. I'm not 100% sure on exactly what all it is, because to me sometimes we can't measure the most important things. But that's, I'm sure that's another series that you have.
Yeah, amen to that. That's something we're always talking about.
And so that's what happens is there's a shift that comes in. Um And and I think there's different philosophies on how you run buildings, right? Like to me, school shouldn't be punitive. Kids are having to be there like by law until they're 16 years old. Um, and so what is that looking like? Like I think, sometimes when the state comes in, it dysregulates everybody in the building. And so now we've created an uncomfortable environment. And so it's almost contradictory, if you will, because now we're dysregulating the grown-ups who are supposed to regulate and teach, but now we're all in disarray, and now we're coaching or teaching specifically to an assessment. Where's the whole child come in?
So let me ask one more question and then I'll hand over to you, Lee, because I don't want to monopolize this, but it's fascinating. So over here we have like a spectrum of your view working in the education system. And at the one end, you've got the traditionalists, which are very punitive based, behavior based, zero tolerance behavior systems, and the one end. And then the other end, you've got sort of, well, I don't know, I'm probably near the other end actually, but the trauma informed and the positive way of working.
Mm.
And there's very much a divide, I think, reflective of society at the moment. It's a very divisive thing. Are you seeing the same in well, obviously you can't speak for the whole America, but are you seeing the same thing over there, like the extreme from they need a slap to let's go and give them a cuddle and everything will be all right sort of thing?
100%.
Mm.
100%. And so that's one of the things that I love when I go out and I do a lot of my professional developments is I start straight with mindset. How did you get to that belief? What happened in order for you to bring the bias or opinion or perception? Perception and perspective are very different, right? And so
Yeah.
like how are you pulling these things in order to have the best awareness?
So it's not
So like
just
I
here with the
no, like
social media
and that's the whole
arguments
thing
and the
too, is
things.
like I do a lot of like reflecting, like I can't fix anything.
No.
I don't fix people, don't fix kids, but what I can do is help you to try to get to your own aha. And then sometimes when we're on that journey to our own aha, then we have to step back and say, is this for me? Because there has been a big shift, and like I'm kind of in this spot now because I see what happens to kids when we are not coaching people up, we're not coaching them up or coaching them out. Like I'm all about like tools and giving people what they need, but I also am in a place too where I don't feel like I should walk into a building and there's teachers like walking around with their protesting sticks or buttons because they need raises. Like that's not the space. But I understand, like, and so it's like, and those are the people that may have a tendency to be more of that traditional style. I will say what's been really cool this school year is I've been working with a lot of new teachers, and it is fire. They're green, but they understand more along the lines of the emotionality component.
Mm.
So there's more patience there. I feel like too, because they're new, they're more eager to think outside of the box because they're curious.
Mm.
I think when you get back into that traditionalistic style is like anytime that you ever question an authority, that's disrespect. Well,
Mm.
now I look at that as mere curiosity, right? And so like, how do we help educators to flip that lens? Because even
Do you
our
know,
north area of our county and our south area of our county are very different in regards to lens.
Luke said we're very like, and 100% we really are, because like one of the things I go, look, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm just here to question you how you think. And
Absolutely.
one of my big things is I can't make lives perfect, but I can make lives a bit better. And
Absolutely.
that's what I try to do. And that also one of the things I say, do you want to punish behavior or do you want to change it? What's your plan
Yep.
here? Because there's two
Yep.
different things.
And
What's the
how's it
thing?
working for
Yeah,
you?
exactly. Why
How's
are we
it
still
working for
doing?
you?
Is what you are doing working? No. Then why are you still doing it?
But I tried that for how long? 5 minutes. I'm gonna need 15 days.
Yeah.
I believe.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
believe.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And again, it's no slate, but it's like
No.
people want quick fixes, right?
Yeah.
And
Doesn't
that's
work.
always like that's how I started out. I can't fix or change anything. But what I can do is maybe validate some of the things that you used to do, but when you're in the weeds, you forget.
Yeah.
And so let's talk through it because you know how to do it.
Yeah.
It's just you're so dysregulated when crisis hits that you're like, oh my God, I'm the adult. I'm like, you are. Like, take a breath, man.
Yeah.
Slow down.
Yeah.
We got to slow down. And that's the whole thing is like we work so hard on regulation. And if we get regulated, then it rolls into motivation. And then when we're motivated, it runs into access, right? And then that's where people get hung up too, is the motivational piece. We got extrinsic, intrinsic. They're not intrinsically motivated yet. Kids struggle with, you got to taste it, baby. You got to taste the success. And when you taste it, you want more.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm like, why are you so anti-reinforcer? There's certain things that I get it. I'm like, why are you denying a need when it's evident that that need is there? Like, what happened to you? What happened to you?
Yeah.
Let's talk.
Well, that's it. A lot
that.
of it is the psychology and the theory of mind stuff and the mindset. I do base it the adults because if they can apply it to themselves, then they're more likely to be able to apply it to the students.
Absolutely. And that's
Mm.
I'm like, you are the heartbeat and the pulse.
Yeah.
You are everything. Like the way that you respond and what an opportunity to model when it hits the fan,
Mm.
right? You
Mm.
get to show it. And that's what I tell teachers all the time too. I'm like, it's okay if you talk out loud to say, you know what? I'm a little bit frustrated. And now that I'm frustrated, maybe I just need to take a breath.
Mm.
And talking it out loud. And so the teachers, for one, they see that you're actually a human and haven't levitated from the floor and go out to dinner in the cafeteria, because kids think that we are part of the furniture.
Mm.
Right. And so there's so many different dynamics when it comes to that, because I'm a humanistic person when it comes to connection, right? Tell people all the time, connect before you correct. If you
Yeah.
go in like, where's your work? Like, I don't
Yeah.
know. They're going to flip you off and you're going to be like, why did he do that? That's disrespectful. Well,
Yeah.
A, why did you touch something that was on his desk that's not yours without permission? You would have lost your mind if he'd have gone behind your desk
No.
and started rumbling in your stuff. And I think that bugs me too. There's a
Yeah.
hierarchy of this age thing. And we need to get in and have these meaningful conversations. Let's define respect together.
Yeah. And what you don't
Let's have
automatically
that
have
common
respect.
language.
Why should you? And you've got children, every adult in their
Absolutely.
life has been awful to them. What you come
Yes,
in and say, so suddenly they're going to go, oh yeah, you're great. Let me
absolutely.
respect you and worship you.
And Sam, that's the whole thing too, because those more challenging kids are going to be the ones that are going to push harder
Yeah.
against you because all they're doing is trying their boundary and to test it and to say,
Mm.
who is she now going to turn me over to?
Mm.
Because I've been so displaced or, just off to the side for so long. And so why not test her boundary too? And those are, and to be honest, I like those challenging cases. I do better with a kid
I
calling me
love
everything but a white
I
girl
love
and
being
throwing
sworn
stuff at
at.
me
I
and not at
swear
me.
at me,
Me too, girl.
I'm your friend forever.
Me too. And I've gotten
Yeah.
kids out of ceilings and I'm like, wow, that was impressive. And the teacher's like, oh my God, you're not mad? I'm like, no, that was badass. That's
Yeah.
crazy. I'm like, that's wild. That's impressive. We'll talk about the how later, but that might be his win for the day, which is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, we're going to go on forever with
Oh, I
all of
know.
this.
I'm
What do
sorry.
you want to say? Something
I don't know.
intellectual about
I'm watching
systems or
kindred
something?
spirits meet across the Atlantic at the moment.
Totally.
Yeah,
So, a
definitely.
couple of things. I think let's just orientate listeners for a moment. So, we've used SEN and a couple of other acronyms. Are we meaning the same things in both countries? Is one thing I put to the two of you. So, what does SEN stand for, first of
So
all?
SEN is a special educational need that requires support additional to or different from the majority, I'm going to say,
Mhm.
of students.
So I'm thinking that's probably our special education services or LRE, which is our least restrictive environment type
Let's
situation where yeah, it's called LRE. So what you try to do is based on the needs of the child. You don't want them in the most restrictive environment. You want them in the least restrictive because the last thing that you want to do is deny access. And so there's percentages where we categorize kids into are you less than 20% of the day? Are you 50% of the day? Or are you more than 80% of the day? in a small group classroom is a lot of a way that we look at a lot of that.
Okay, so that's one bit. And then the second type of jargon is we have, what is it, EHCP plans in the UK. Sam, do you want to explain those ones?
Yeah, so the EHCP is a plan that comes, like I said, with extra funding for some children who aren't making adequate progress, and it's clear that they need extra funding either to pay for some sort of additional human support, or maybe some assistive technology, or some alternative provision within the school or another school. It comes with additional funding,
Yep.
and they're quite the most common ones recently are for behavior and autism,
Mhm.
that they've been giving them up, but it can be for a wide range of reasons.
So the way that, so do you guys have like your IEPs, like your individualized educational
Yeah,
plans?
we used to, but they're not so in favor anymore. We went for provision mapping instead,
Okay.
over here,
Okay.
but it is kind of like a formalized IEP.
Got it. Because what you were just discussing in regards to like assistive technology and things like that, that's actually covered within our IEP under off the top of my head, I cannot think of the section. But basically it kind of talks through like, are you blind? Are you deaf? Do you need braille? Alternate forms to access. And so that's where we can go in as the case holder or IEP team to determine if a student needs an additional level of support. We also have here in Georgia, specifically in one of the counties that I used to work with, it was called LIPT, which is a local interplanning team. And so what we do is we gather once a month with the school district to bring in outside resources in order to determine if kids would meet not even necessarily eligibility, but kind of brainstorm additional care that doesn't fall necessarily within the school.
And does that come with extra money?
Um, I mean, if it says that you need an iPad in your IEP, like you have to get the iPad. They got to find the money. So that's where sometimes it gets a little bit interesting, is that I feel like maybe sometimes we withhold options because that we know that there's a lack of funding, and you have to get a I don't like it. But you're like in regards to the creativity. Sorry, I got a brand new puppy. So yeah, I mean it's just, it's just one of those things.
But I think that's where there's a similarity between England and the States there, Lindsay, because lots of parents are having to fight for their
Mm,
EHCP plans.
yep, yep.
And, often they get rejected and you've got to go through an appeal process and your child isn't in school because their needs aren't being met or the school says it can't meet those needs. And so you get these ongoing battles that are basically putting huge amounts of pressure on the system. And it's clear the system needs reform, and that's what the discussion is at the moment that's happening. Can we
Yeah, I mean
reform this?
absolutely. There's just I go into schools and I'm like how are they providing access to communication? Like to me, that's my everything is regulation and communication, right? And if we know that those are massive deficits, how are we closing the gap and what are we putting in place? Right. And I think it goes back to what I was talking about earlier when you're looking at the funding pockets and the buckets. I mean, that's what a lot of schools depend on. And that's why I really enjoy working with GLRS, because we get into some of these smaller districts that might only have maybe four schools. But because of the lack of resources that they have or access to specialists, it's been really encouraging and exciting to get out into some of our more rural areas and to help.
I think you also need to explain rural for English ears, Lindsay, because we're not used to
Country.
that term.
Yeah, like we call that out in the sticks where I live.
I know what I grew up out in the sticks, Luke. It's only
I
townies
think
like
there's
you
rural
that don't know what
UK,
it is.
where you
Rural.
think of like a quaint little village or, a town that's in some form of decline. And then you've got like rural America.
Yeah.
I
Like,
admit that, yeah, my closest neighbour was a mile away, but I would imagine that in America, a lot of them are miles and miles and miles away.
oh, absolutely. So the areas that I work in, I mean, it is real heavy poverty,
Yeah.
poverty and just lack of access. And what's typically happening is you work you work near your house, right? And so a lot of the teachers are local. And that's what's great is being able to go in and collaborate with them, and really just sharpen skills. And that's what I tell people all the time. I'm like, anytime that you can be in a room with like 20 brilliant people, like let's lean in. Like lean in. We can only
Yeah.
make each other better.
How is the divide between state education and paid for education, independent education, we call it here? Is there a big divide? Is it how does that
It's
work?
I find it interesting because we've got public schools, which are completely like taxpayer like funded, government and taxpayer funded. Then we have charter schools, which are where you can apply to go to the school. The school then picks who gets to come, and then they get, yeah. See how your eyebrows just did? That's what my face looks like too, sister. Yep. So you've got that charter, and then you have full blown private. And so once you hit that private sector, state, federal, local, like as long as you meet the criteria that you set forth, then you typically don't have problems.
Yeah, your charter
A lot of
sounds
the
a lot
charter
like
schools, have issues at times because what happens is a lot of special education students leave public ed in hopes that a charter will have more to offer and be a smaller setting for their child. But really, what happens is due to a lack of required certification to teach special education or certain subjects, that's not necessarily there.
oh,
So then they
okay.
can kind of pick and choose who comes. And some kids that go from public to charter, they end up right back in public because public's funding in order to meet that need looks a little bit different, but the size of the classrooms are smaller in charter.
So we have, I don't know, I don't think it is similar to charter. We have the grammar system where it's still a public school, but you have to pass a certain entry level of
Hmm.
testing in
Hmm.
order to be able to go there. Um, and it can be quite elite. A lot of the grammar schools are some of the top performing schools in the country. I'm not a fan of the grammar system. Um, but they are still qualified teachers and they still have to adhere to all the public
Right,
school regulations as well. So it's a bit different in
right.
that respect.
I think the
Yeah.
closest we've got, Sam, to the charter school model is probably, do you remember free schools?
Yeah.
Where these would be set up by parents. Parents could set up the school and it could, think about the curriculum. So one of the things working with Lindsay that I learned was, parent choice is really important in America. So parents
Hmm.
can leave at the drop of a hat if they're not happy with that school, and
Oh,
it
can they?
changes
It does
the
as long as
dynamics.
like, yeah, because what happens is too, like if a parent is not pleased with the school, like they can transfer. But where it gets tricky is then they're required to handle all of the transportation. But
Right.
and then there's also it's really interesting too here in the US from what I find, like as I'm traveling and from different states and things like that. I'm from Tennessee. In the area that I grew up in, private schools were dominant because there was such a depends on the view, um, lack of preparation, if you will, in regards to what my parents' expectations were around education for myself. And so my parents put me, we did the private school route. At the time, I was irate, angry, ninth grade, living my best life, and you move me to the hoity thing, and I'm like, I don't even know anybody. But looking back, it was probably the best decision that my parents made for me, just to open my eyes for access. Because while I was at the private school attending, I had an opportunity to serve children in government housing. And so I was able to kind of find my love of kids because I was involved in a tutoring program when I was in 10th grade. And ever since then, I knew that I just wanted to help kids. And so that opened my eyes to things beyond my nose. So yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing, Lindsay.
Yeah.
And so thinking about the comparators between UK and America, there's this tension that I'm hearing throughout the whole conversation, which is education a gateway to equality access fairness? Or does it feel like actually the system is so old now, whatever that original purpose was, it is now no longer producing that either in the UK or in the US?
I mean, I think the system is completely antiquated, like personally, and I also think that that is why universities are now looking beyond just grades, right? Because they understand. I think that they understand that the system is what it is, and there are other things beyond a sit and get in your butt in a chair, right? And so I think really the upper ed is starting to recognize that there's a lot of talented people that are out there with crazy skill sets that might not be your best writer or your best reader or fantastic at math, right? But like the sky is the limit with some of the creativity that's out there. And so I think it's antiquated. I think school is made for little girls that like to sit and follow directions. Um and because of that, I think a lot of our kids fall through the gaps because their teachers want the little girl that's sitting and not being disruptive because I find there's also two different pockets. I've taught in preschool or I've worked with preschool, elementary, middle, and high school, and they're very different personalities, if you will. Like I find you're either like all about your subject area and oh, I love lit, or man, I really like being with the kids, you know. And so when you find that beautiful marriage, I think that's when our kids become the most successful.
Love it. Love it.
Mm.
I think we are twins, really, Lindsay, except I'm probably a lot older than you, despite my Zoom filter that I've got on for those that are you watching in person. So let me ask you
Yeah,
another question then, because this is kind of
sure.
similarly related, and it's almost like, well, let's ask the American all the questions about
I love
America.
it.
Um, the impression that I get from a lot of American culture that I see is that children are very infantilized by parenting styles in America. Now,
Hmm.
this is what I'm asked. This is a personal question because they are
Yeah.
quite often grounded, no alcohol till you're 21, and extreme punishments for like stuff that I would consider normal adolescent behavior. And it's almost like
Mhm.
they want, particularly adolescents, it sometimes feel very overprotective, if that makes
We,
sense.
yeah, we call those helicopter parents.
Right, okay. Is that
Yeah.
just the ones I'm seeing, obviously, or is it a general pattern?
I don't know. I think I see patterns. I definitely see patterns. I also feel like when we're working with kids, like nobody ever wants to see their kid fail, but guess what? It's a part of like
Yeah,
growing. And so, and I think what happens is we as parents don't allow that full process to happen out of fear, which really in the long run, we're doing a disservice. I think I see extremes right now. I see the total helicopter, like sitting in, I heard them sitting in interviews, like job interviews, like the whole thing, right? Um, but then I also see very much maybe that falling into like the passive and permissive parenting, in regards to like, because I'm the boss at the house, I get to be the boss at the school. And so there's a lot of dynamic, from what I'm seeing too, in regards to a lack of support, um, at home when we're working with our educators.
yeah,
And so I
Mm.
think there's just so many gaps right now, in regards to like giving and letting these kids like really have an opportunity to experience, you know, what what they deserve
yeah,
and earn, you
yeah.
know. Like me, I've got two boys. I have two high school boys, well, middle school, middle and high, and very, very different humans. My parenting style is very different with both of them. Like it just has to be. Like I can't be the punitive, you know, crazy mom because for one, I would be miserable, but we will be
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
accountable and we will be responsible. And if you screw up, you're going to make it right.
Yeah.
Like I think, and I think too, I think there's a lot of lack of making it right in school buildings because people feel uncomfortable addressing it. Like when we're mediating with children and
Yeah.
things like that, they're like, I don't know what to say. I'm like, well, have you talked to them? Like, real sweet kid. I'm like, what do I say? But then yet we're the first ones that tell everybody we're really good at connections and relationships.
It's very similar, isn't it? The two systems. I mean, Luke, you've worked over there, but it is very similar. The systems involved and the people involved and
Yeah.
the
And
issues.
and and it's like it's people in, right? Like we're humans. And I think it's a part of it, but I also feel like when you're looking at it from like a systematic approach, like we all got to be on the same team. We all have to be
Mm.
headed in the right direction, you know? And I think what is the stand up or the hold up with some of that are people afraid to have conversations. Like
I
I
think
just
it's
think people
also
have a hard time with it.
what probably changed my perspective and yours a bit on parenting was when you're working in alternative provisions with kids who are violent, kids have been excluded from school, kids in the youth justice system, and you come home and then somebody says, "Well, my kid did this," and you're like, "Yeah, and that's nothing, that's absolutely
I
fine.
know.
That's just normal. Don't worry about it. It's okay."
Right. Well, and then I'm like, am I jaded? Like, I don't know. And like, I question, and then I'm like, well, should I be worried about that? I'm not that worried about it, and then you get into your own head and you're like, oh my God, stop. Like, stop.
Yeah,
Like, the right path to
yeah,
take. Like, just,
yeah.
just
They'll be
stick with it. But
fine.
I also, and I think you're so spot on. And I think that knowing, and my kids know what I do, right? And so,
Yeah,
like, there's this sense of like helping others and community and loving people, like in our house that maybe not necessarily other children get to experience because my kids are the ones that are coming home and they're like, Mom, that kid threw a chair and like it's just so sad and like I want to help him. And then I know what my conversation looks like is like, I love that you want to be that person. And then other families and like, stay away from him. He's
yeah,
trouble. And like,
yeah,
there's these different messages. And I'm like, we all got stuff, right? And it's
yeah,
just like, how can we support one another? And yeah, my kid got scared when someone threw a chair, but guess what? He's going to be okay
yeah,
because he's building resilience.
yeah.
Like and I think that's lacking with our kids too
Oh,
is the
100%.
resilience piece.
What the resilience that they want is not the resilience that they need in life. The
Absolutely.
resilience the education system wants them to have is
Yes.
two different things.
Hands down.
Yeah.
Hands down. So,
Luke, do you
So
want to
on
ask
that
a
note,
question before we
not
start?
on that note.
Sorry, I've monopolized this. You were right, though.
no,
You
no.
knew
Well,
this
I
was
think it'd be
coming.
useful to hear because one of the big debates since Australia
Oh,
has
yeah.
banned mobile phones is
Mm,
we're now, I think, going into consultation in the UK about whether the
okay.
ban should be outright. And bearing in mind, a lot of these companies are based in the States where the age
Hmm.
of access is 13 years old, and there's no
Hmm.
evidence for why that was decided, just is. Um, so, from your perspective, Lindsay, can you ever see something like that happen in America where mobile phones will be banned in schools?
Well, so in where I live, if you are in elementary school, you are not allowed to have a phone on campus. Middle school, so Owen's in eighth grade, so he can have his phone at school, but he's only allowed to access it before or after, which is really interesting why I get texts during the day. So there's that. But anyways, then my oldest is in high school and they can have it, they just can't have it out in class. So it's real like because to me, I'm like, well, that are we teaching them how to use the device?
This
Like,
is what Luke and I are
like,
saying all of the
like,
time.
like you got to teach skills. Like
Yeah.
it can't be like an all or nothing. I mean, it can, but then the moment you have an opportunity to have some autonomy, like you can't handle it because you haven't been under the process of the maturation with it. So like that's my whole thing. Like with my kid, I tease him like texting. Well, I mean, as long as you didn't get caught. Like I don't know what to say. Like because to me, I mean, I have my phone with me. I'm not on it during instruction or, like in meetings and things like that, but that's me teaching them responsibility. Like they have like I don't really monitor stuff at my house either and people think I'm crazy. But you haven't given me a reason to be all in your business yet.
Is there a mentality over there, because there is in Australia and a little bit here, that if we ban mobile phones and stopped under 16s being on social media, we're going to have no problems at all? Is there
No,
that
because then
mentality? Because there's that expectation here that everything will be fine because
it's
everything was
hysterical.
fine
No,
before phones and before social media.
no, because then people would actually have to interact with one another and like humans,
Yeah,
like, and that's a whole nother skill,
yeah.
right? And that's what's so wild too, is like, I don't know, like you just have to teach skill. Like you got to
Oh,
teach
I know.
responsibility. You've got to teach ownership.
Yeah.
It's not an all or nothing. Like I just feel like everything is just like so extreme, and like what happened to rational and logical?
Well, that's a good question, probably for another podcast that we could be
Will you
discussing
invite
for
me again? We
hours.
can do it
Yeah, we
again.
can do it again on this one because we just sit here going, yes, you're right. That's right. And here's another thing. It'll be
I
like the
know.
Echo Chamber podcast. It'd be
Yeah.
lovely.
But it
Yeah.
is, it's great. Like I mean, I love my work. I love opportunities to collaborate
Mm.
with people, like-minded people. Um, when I get up against a stalemate, I'm like, ooh, how can I, like, it doesn't bother me. Like it's actually a challenge. It's not personal, like I've learned a lot about myself, um, and how to navigate like crisis and difficult situations.
And that's
Um,
great, Lindsay, but wait till the menopause hits because then the navigating is, oh, I just can't be asked.
well,
Just crack on.
I'm almost there, but I
Yeah.
will say this. I'm still trying to figure out how to behave myself at youth sports. Like
Oh,
I'm
God.
telling you, I will tell on myself. Like I am one of those crazies.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I taught a training in de-escalation last week. Hold my breath, and I'm like, stop, stop. Like I'm super competitive, but I'm
Yeah.
an athlete. Like I played college ball. My husband played some pro ball. Like we just live and breathe competition. And I'm like, people aren't totally psycho like you, Roga. Like settle, like bring it down a notch. Gotta bring it down a notch. Bring it
Lindsay,
down
it's
a
been
notch.
such a joy to talk to
Yes,
you. It really, really has. Let
absolutely.
me ask you a couple of questions about systems. We ask these questions because
Sure.
we think it makes us sound clever and
I love
also a
it.
bit of entertainment. What is one system that you cannot live without?
When I go out to dinner, I'm gonna need people to be prompt, and I need for my food to be done. Like I need
Yeah,
that whole system. I need, like, because for me, like, I don't know, it sets the tone.
yeah, it does. Yeah,
So when it comes to food service, I need a good system.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Sorry,
Okay.
it
No,
is
I
one
love
of
that.
the it is. It's just one of those situations, because there's
Yeah.
nothing more annoying when you are trying to go out and enjoy a lovely evening. So I need a good food service system.
Mm. And if you could go back in history and witness one event. You can't change it, you can't interfere, you can't do anything, just witness it.
Mm,
What would you like to go and see?
probably Jesus rising.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah,
That would be really intriguing. Like, because if you were there, you would actually like get to see kind of how they move that rock.
yeah, yeah, like that. Love that.
Just a
Thank
thought,
you.
because that sucker's
Yeah,
really heavy. And so like if they say it's true, so they say. And I'm Christian. I'll put that out there. But like I find that really interesting. I think that would be cool, just to see how that
how did
all
it
happened. Like
happen?
sitting in the bush, you know, boom.
Yes, yes, I like that. Um, Luke, what's your biggest takeaway from today?
I think my biggest takeaway talking to Lindsay is always the energy she brings, but just how similar the challenges are in education systems at the moment.
Mm,
It is not, it can feel very like national or localized, but there
yeah.
is something that needs to happen across multiple educational systems if we're to create those bridges for the future.
Mm,
There's like a haze in the air right now. You know what I mean? It's just
yeah.
it's and some of it's a little thicker and denser in certain places, but like it's a vibe. There's a
Mm,
vibe around it right now, I would say,
yeah.
regardless of where I go.
And mine is it's just reinforcement that it's connection and belonging
Mm.
is everything. And that's just so important. Lindsay, is there anything you want to promote? Any books? Any other lesser quality
No,
podcasts you may have
no,
been
I mean
on?
I have an Instagram. I'm still waiting on my website.
Yeah, I
But
did
like
try and Google your website, but all that came up was a Swiss company. So I don't know what they do.
yeah, that's
Um,
that. We're working through that. Just some,
Excellent.
yep, we are working through it. So I'll let you know when
Brilliant.
all of that's kind of live, but I've got LinkedIn, I've got Instagram.
Yeah.
I'm around.
It's been an
Lindsay Roga.
absolute pleasure to speak to you. It really, really, really
Yes,
has. And thank you
absolutely.
so much. I really resisted the urge to go into a southern drawl whilst you're talking to me because it's bad, as you can
I
hear. But
love it.
listen, everybody,
I appreciate the effort. I like
I
that.
love it. I love it. Everybody, thank you for listening to this episode. Please subscribe if you liked it. If you didn't like it, listen again because obviously you're wrong. And remember, take care of yourself. And we'll hope to see you again soon. Say goodbye, Luke.
Au revoir.
See you soon. Bye.
See ya.